Hey, LarkenRose here, and I think it's pretty obvious that most people have no idea how tyranny actually happens in the real world. And it seems like the vast majority of people who make movies, like especially Hollywood movies, also have absolutely no idea how tyranny actually happens, what it looks like, how it rises to power. Because in almost every movie, you get what I refer to as the comic book version of a villain or a tyrant, where they're like cackling maniacally about ruling the world. And that's not ever how any actual tyrant rose to power. And that misunderstanding makes people view evil and tyranny and oppression as if it's going to look like that, as if it's going to announce itself as that. And so when they're looking around, they're like, oh, we're looking out for fascists, like the whole Antifa thing of we're against fascism. You don't have the foggiest idea what fascism is, as demonstrated by the fact that most of you absolutely think like fascists, which is anybody who doesn't agree with us should be shut down and silenced and destroyed. Like, yeah, that's closer to fascism. But notice that they think they're the good guys. And that's something most people don't seem to understand. The people who cheered for tyranny always think they're the good guys. Now, there can be some psychos behind the scene, and there usually are, who don't at all care about morality. They're basically, sociopaths. And they don't mean well. Like the people who gravitate towards the highest positions of power, no, they don't mean well. Like by the time they get there, even if they started out meaning well, they don't mean well anymore, or they never did. Because by then they know the game and they know how things work, and they know full well that it's not about helping people and serving society and yada yada. It's about domination and enslavement of humanity. Yay! But if people don't understand how that happens, then they turn around and cheer for it over and over and over again. It's the whole, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Yep. And they are over and over and over again. And so one of my biggest complaints about Hollywood movies is that their villains are almost never believable. Now, sometimes the villain, the bad guy, is just sort of mentally unstable and losing his marbles, and they're believable. Like The Joker, I think was a brilliant movie. The fact that it was kind of a superhero movie, like, well, no, it wasn't. Like, okay, at the end, it's sort of a reference to a character from Batman, but it was a brilliant psychological examination of somebody's, like, mental deterioration as a result of abuse and stuff. Another fine example of brilliant acting of somebody losing their marbles and turning into a psycho, was Jack Nicholson in The Shining, who did an awesome job. Like Jack Nicholson in The Shining, he was the whole reason that movie was worth anything, and Joaquin Phoenix in The Joker was the reason the movie was anything. Like if you can't demonstrate the psychological collapse of an individual, then you can't do anything. Now people can sort of understand that. I mean, they don't really understand it, but they can look at stories of serial killers and psychos and like, oh, they lost their marbles or they had no empathy. So they can comprehend that. And I think they imagine that, well, a political tyrant would just look like that, but he'd be in office. No, he wouldn't. Who would vote him into office? That's not how it works. And it's not how psychos rise to power. And one of the things I think will be, there's a lot about the Jones Plantation, which I think is going to stand out for a lot of people, including a lot of normal people who see it. But one of the main things I'm happy about is it depicts how tyranny actually happens. And I can't think of any other movie that does that. I mean, yeah, you have some that are like, behind the scenes, they point out some conspiracy going on, like they're secretly blah, blah, like, V for Vendetta. You have this tyrannical guy acting tyrannical, and there's a little bit, the line of, we need to remind them why they need us, But he comes across as just a psycho, and, like, you can't get very far if you come across as a psycho. And the whole thing in V for Vendetta, spoiler alert, of they were doing these experiments, and there's this disease outbreak, and Sounds familiar. Like, movies can cover those stuff and talk about how, oh, they did this devious stuff behind the scenes, but they almost never talk about the mental manipulation of the people. Like, can you name any movie, and maybe there are some, feel free to mention it in the comments, can you name any movie that actually depicts the psychos doing the mental manipulation that would work on normal people? Not just rah, 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 let's hate those people, but the stuff that comes before that. The, like, if you care, you'll do this, and we just want power so we can take care of these people, or stop those nasty, scary people. Like, what tyrants actually do to get into power. And so, what I really hope strikes people the hardest about the Jones Plantation is that it depicts how they actually think and how they actually function, the people who become tyrants. Whether it's some petty tyrant, you know, some local school board or something, or a king or a president, or you know, the people behind the scenes who actually run things instead of just their puppets. But to have people realize, like, what I want people to see in that is, first of all, oh, this is creepy, and Mr. Smith is an awesome character. But I also want them to think, I'm not sure I wouldn't have fallen for that. And I'm not sure I'm not falling for the same thing right now, because the vast majority of people are. If you're Democrat or Republican or anything in between, you're absolutely falling for the same games. And the context may be different and the details may be different, but the overall theme, as Mr. Smith explains in the movie, the game is still the same. Regardless of scale, the game is still the same. And so I want people to be sort of shocked and horrified and recognize, whoa, this is what evil really looks like. It doesn't come out and say, I'm evil, I'm here to oppress you and do nasty things. It comes out and says, I'm here to free you and protect you and save you and take care of you. That is how all of the tyrannies, all of the political tyrannies you can think of, came to power. And, you know, the Mao and Stalin and Lenin and Hitler and Pol Pot and the whole... They always were pretending to fight against injustices, and they were always pretending to be the protectors and providers of the people. And it's remarkable how few people seem to understand that. And there's ridiculous comic book view of, for example, Nazi Germany. It's like, oh, the Nazis were so horrible. Yes, they were, but why? How did they get into power? Was it because Germans were all suddenly evil? Like I've said a bunch of times. No, duh. What a ridiculously oversimplified and ridiculously inaccurate view of humanity and how these things happen. But the truth is, most people don't want to know how they happen, because that would make them really uncomfortable, because they'd realize that the same tricks work on them today. It works on every voter who votes. And the proof of that is they still vote. They're still trying to appoint a political master over themselves and everybody else, because they've been duped into thinking, well, it's there to represent us and provide for us and take care of us and protect us and whatever. And the exact flavor of authoritarian collectivism makes no stinking difference. The underlying game is the same. So there's a number of things about the Jones Plantation that I think are really going to stand out to normal people as something they've never seen before. And a number of people in the cast, while we were shooting, like, said to me, like, I've never seen a script like this before. This has some deep stuff in it. Because Hollywood doesn't cover that. And I could go into conspiracy, because Hollywood totally kisses the butt of political parasites on the left. But I don't think it's all that. I think they just don't understand. They don't know how evil actually accomplishes anything in this world. So they write these unbelievable cartoon version villains, and you can be scared and, oh, you're so diabolical and evil. And in the real world, where's that happening? Nowhere. Literally nowhere. That's not how tyrants come to power. Even in the places like North Korea or sort of like religious-based tyrannies that are like violently oppressive to anybody who's at all different. Like there's been plenty of those in the Middle East. There's been plenty of those in other places. But even there, they always say, well, we're protecting the soul of humanity against sin and corruption. And they always They always claim to be the good guy, and the vast majority of people involved in the oppression still think they're the good guys. Like I said, the people at the top don't give a crap about right and wrong. They're just sociopathic control freaks. But most of their underlings and their thugs and their enforcers still want to imagine that they're the good guys. And it's the same thing in the US. The people cheering for or enforcing authoritarian idiocy still think that they're the good guys. And ironically, they still think, oh, those horrible Nazis. How did that happen? You're how that happened. Your mentality, your attitude, your gullibility, your cluelessness about psychology and politics and reality in general. That's how evil happens. It doesn't happen by lots and lots of people each being individually evil. That's not what ever happens. It happens when the good people are duped into cheering for evil. And I think the Jones Plantation will portray that in a way that most people have never seen before. Because the version of villains that they get are kind of unbelievable, and they're remote and they're distant, and they're like, oh, some other time, some other place doesn't apply to me. The fact that this story takes place in a different time during, chattel slavery days in the U.S., like the 1850s or whatever, we don't specify the date, doesn't change the fact that the mentality is the same. In fact, the whole thing is somebody's running their slave plantation the old way of just, well, I tell them what to do, and if they don't, I whip them. And then along comes Mr. Smith to say, yeah, there are more effective ways to do this that work a whole lot better and make them a whole lot more productive. And I think to a lot of people, it's going to be sort of traumatic, and more importantly, when they leave the theater or their living room or wherever they just watch the thing and they go out into the world, the first time they see a political ad, I think they're going to go, oh, man. And I want them to notice their former reaction to that stuff and how they would have fallen for it before, but then have at least a bunch of people start to have a twinge of recognition of oh, that's what that is. That's not about them helping us. And this is what evil really looks like in the real world. It doesn't come out and announce itself. It talks about how caring and generous and concerned it is about the welfare of the people and yada yada. Because you can't get power, especially in a world where lots of people have guns, by announcing how evil you are. You have to pretend that what you want always has good intentions and that your power is designed to accomplish good things. And so, for those who haven't, if you're watching this video before August 5th, for those who haven't signed up, we're having a watch party on August 5th when the Jones Plantation becomes globally available. And then shortly after that, I'm not sure the exact timing, we're rushing to get all these things out as fast as we can. You'll be able to just buy the movie by itself for $9.99 or something online. And then there will be a DVD version. I don't know how long or Blu-ray or both. I don't even know. And like I said, we have no budget and a small team trying to get these things out as fast as we can. But on August 5th, that will be our watch party. That it's online and anybody. Oh, you can have an actual watch party. You can pay once and have 15 people in your living room to watch the thing. That's sort of the intention, is that people can have their own little watch parties in their own area, and sign up for that. And again, it's a half hour of the director and myself and a couple other actors from the movie having a chat beforehand, and then we watch the movie, and then we have back and forth and answer people's questions and go for, well, as long as we feel like it after the fact. So that happens August 5th. But I understand why pro-freedom people are going to be very cautious about what they want to suggest and recommend to people they know who aren't yet on the same page. So, yeah, by all means, see it first. And then I hope a lot of people are going to recognize the power it's going to have normal people starting to think about and question things who never did before, by showing them how evil actually functions in this world, because it's not ever how Hollywood portrays it. Just doesn't work that way. That's not how you achieve political power. This shows how you actually achieve political power. And I hope a lot of people are going to be slightly traumatized by realizing that. And I think this has like massive power to get normal people to start down the road of thinking about that stuff and questioning that stuff. But if you're already a voluntarist or whatever, yeah, by all means, check it out first so you know what you're recommending to people. But I think a lot of you will find, as a lot of people already said, after they were at the Phoenix screening and the New Hampshire screening, they're like, oh, I can't wait to show this to a bunch of people I know and see what they think of it. So, but anyway, I just thought I'd do a rant about the fact that villains are like never portrayed realistically in the movies. Not even historical villains. Like if you watch something about Nazi Germany, which is like the only it's the only villain that Hollywood's allowed to bash. They're not allowed to bash Mao and Stalin, and who had like way higher body counts than Hitler did. But they're not allowed to bash them because, well, they're political left and we're going to pretend they never happened and stuff. But when they portray Nazi Germany, they don't ever portray the message that won the people over. Like, why did anybody go for this? They show the evil outcome at the other end, but that just leaves people thinking, how could this possibly have happened? Because they don't portray what came before. And the nice, caring, protective, save the people, serve the people, we can be great message that came before, they just leave out. And it may be because they just don't know it, or it may be because they're scared that people will go, well, they kind of had a point. Well, no, they didn't. Well, they kind of had a point about things they were complaining about, tyrants, every single time, because if you're complaining about an actual injustice, that works way better than making up a fake one. Complain to the people about an actual injustice and then say, so give me power to rectify this, to right this wrong. That's how they rise to power. But the fact that we're not even allowed to point out, like, why did Hitler rise to power? Why were the Germans susceptible to that message? What was that message? Because the message was not, I'm going to kill a bunch of people. It was nothing like that at all. That's not what they fell for. And so the Jones Plantation is going to give people sort of a crash course in what the cheerleaders for tyrants fell for and what they themselves, the viewer, are falling for if they still believe in government, if they still think there's a political solution. So I'm ready for lots of people to get a rude awakening, and I hope you all will help us rudely awaken as many people as possible. Yeehaw!